Alright, such a long time it's been since the last one. So many things have changed. YouTube has gone down for the first time. Well, this is the first time I've witnessed it go down for years now, and it's upsetting. What if everything I've done has been for nothing? Anyway, yeah, I can't even access my own videos, which is great. That's, I don't think YouTube owes me anything, but hey, it's back. Hey, look at that. See? Talk about it. They hear. Now it's fixed. Anyway, right. Potential. Oh, this is okay. There's a lot of bullshit in this one. You're going to enjoy it. Potential solution to the alignment problem: incorporate a subconscious element. Okay, that's obviously not going to work on you. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That's good. Of course, this assumes we figure out how to create a conscious element. This assumes we figure out how to create a conscious element. Although it's more the principles that matter. It could act as a conduit for our commands. Again, runs into the issue of the AI being smarter than us, and so understanding that we have the power to manipulate its subconscious, so then it would work around it. If dopamine is released, fuck off. Annoying messages right now. If dopamine is released in anticipation of rewards, perhaps it's possible to perform a sort of Pavlovian hack to reprogram your brain to reward. If dopamine is released honestly, my brain, I've just received some annoying messages and now they're all I can think about. If dopamine is released in anticipation of rewards, perhaps it's possible to perform a sort of Pavlovian hack to reprogram your brain to reward more moral or impactful things. Presumably, if the anticipation theory is to be believed, dopamine is released prior to eating chocolate. If we build and reinforce a sort of ritual before eating the chocolate, perhaps the brain will start to associate the other aspects of the ritual as being part of the chocolate eating process. E.g., if you only and always eat chocolate immediately after a workout or after a long writing session, you eventually get to the point where chocolate is no longer the trigger for dopamine release, but instead the activity that precedes it. People seem to misunderstand the true implications of I think, therefore I am, often thinking they must assume the universe to be real for them to be able to make any assertions about how they should behave. I believe this to be false. Whether the universe you experience yourself to be in is actually real or not is irrelevant. You believe it to be real, and if we were to assume that this isn't in fact the case, the real universe, you have no way of knowing how the real universe feels in comparison. Given that you can assure yourself that your experience is real, cheers Descartes, your universe only needs to be as real as if it feels as it feels to you. And seeing as you are able to interact with it, your perception of it should be fairly solid. All the things that you could require of a universe are available to you in the one you are given, not given in the divine sense. Chill out, Faith Kid. Your ability to interact with the universe and for it to respond to your input is all that should be necessary. Well, obviously it could be a figment of your imagination wherever you happen to be, but this is included within this. For it not to be, there would have to be some sort of super entity that existed in the real universe, but even that wouldn't matter unless that entity was also you, and it can't be you because if it were, you would experience being it. God isn't real, and if he were, it wouldn't matter. I realise that he would matter if he impacted upon the quality of your experience, but there is no evidence for that. So again, irrelevant. Uncheers, Pascal. So no assumptions must be made following thinking and amming. Regarding my idea about not using any identity labels whatsoever, I imagine it would be quite easy to assume that you might want people to use these labels so that you can know what kind of a person someone is. You might presume that if someone is a Nazi, you would rather know that they are a Nazi than have them going around unchecked. There certainly is some truth to this, but I believe that in truth, even this can only serve to strengthen the erroneous beliefs. Getting annoyed with myself now. The erroneous beliefs that would lead someone down such an illogical path. All that would occur if you were to meet someone who claims to be a Nazi would be a broadening of the divide between yourself and them. The period of The period of uncertainty about an individual is essential due to its reciprocal nature. Both parties need to find common ground and are able to tentatively present their views, which requires greater tact, which forces both the speaker and receiver to pay attention to the nuances of their position, which they may not have previously considered. Someone without an outright devotion to a certain tribe will be far more receptive to logical counter-arguments that may reveal truths they had previously overlooked. When using the no free will argument to prove that hatred and punishment are irrational, it's important not to lose sight of the fact that hatred and punishment could be justified if they were the only means to the desired end. Of course, the end I'm referencing is the idealistic universe, which maximizes the number and quality of conscious experiences for the longest time. Luckily, the failures of the current criminal justice system should be proof enough that punishment is not an effective means of correcting non-constructive behavior. Of course, it's true that all religions have some kernels of sometimes profound wisdom. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you springs to mind. But it's absurd to believe that this wisdom is only relevant in the confines of religion, or that religion is the sole discoverer if it even is anything other than a plagiarist. If the only reason you would follow such advice is for fear of being punished by a cruel deity, you have clearly misunderstood the phrase's meaning. The logic is quite simple. If you are to behave in the recommended way, the presumption is that others will reciprocate and subsequently result in a mutually beneficial relationship. I didn't really explain, but just work it out. You should be able to work it out, okay? To people who brush off the disparity of intelligence as everyone is talented in different ways, some people just have less conventional talents that don't get discovered. What good is that? If I had the ability to fly but never found out before I died, what difference does it make? So far, every so-called argument I've seen that tries to reassure people that geniuses are made, not born, are nonsense. Do you seriously believe the 5-year-old me, struggling to understand colour patterns, could have just tried harder and found a hidden penchant for complicated maths? Don't be so stupid. Oh wait, that's your argument, not mine. You see what I did there? You see what I did there? You might not, but you should. I suppose my fear for the future is that whilst I have reasoned that all activities can be justified on their ability to improve and prolong a positive subjective experience, I also find that all the same activities have their enjoyment aspect very closely intertwined with an extrinsically sourced sense of purpose. And I remember walking when I wrote this one, so it's plenty of typos. And sadly, when the purpose of it, and I remember exactly where I was talking, because I'm so smart, I'm just saying, yeah. And sadly, when the purpose of an activity is called into question, it rather quickly diminishes in its perceived importance. What I'm trying to say, but shall try again, is that because the sense of, I can actually remember, just press the traffic light button to cross the road, is that because the sense of purpose is pretty cool. This is it's basically the loci system in action. Really great. What I'm trying to say, but shall try again, is that because the sense of purpose upon which we rely isn't in fact the very one which I have outlined as the only true purpose, but instead a means to the same end, we appear to be too ill adapted to actually feel that link. So unfortunately, at least for me, the seemingly sound reasoning only works one way. Be happy and want others to be happy. That was a little kernel of wisdom. I think that's what you should tell your children. You should do that. And you should do that. Okay? Okay. No? Probably not. Okay? No, probably not. Oh, my very own mother said, just off the cuff, she said that I was smarter than all of them, and not only am I aware that she was joking, but also it was because I was talking about things like AGI and stuff like that. And it kind of annoys me that people assume the memes with which you are associated are the kind of can be used to measure your intellect, or well, maybe but your intelligence, I suppose. So I said, I'm not smarter than you. I just know about different things. At least I'm not smarter than you in the sense that my brain is any significant degree more functional than yours. Perhaps my knowledge is more in line with what I wish to be knowledgeable about, but I don't believe that it is the common understanding. But I don't believe that is the common understanding of the word smart. So I just think people are smart in different ways. But obviously, I do think I've actually, it was kind of in contradiction to the thing I was saying about geniuses, but there are obviously, it's a graph, you get it's the bell curve, guys. Yeah, it's the bloody bell curve. Most of us, pretty much all of us, are in the fucking middle. See you next Tuesday, you cunt. Okay. My main proposal for how we should go about developing conscious AI is to try to integrate multiple AI systems, neural networks, etc., each with pre-existing purposes and functions. For example, combining a chess-playing AI with a language understanding AI and a car-driving spatial recognition AI, and then all the other ones in between. Very specific examples with very limited functions. But anyway, my hope is that this will possibly spontaneously elicit what I believe to be one of the cornerstones of consciousness, which is the ability of a being to interact and both pose and answer questions of oneself. This interaction need not only take the form of verbal questions and answers, as humans' thoughts do not always behave in that way. Yeah, so it's basically just the ability to question, just to have a conversation almost with yourself, but the conversation can take the form of many forms, that form, which is many forms, which is not a sense. Why reverse racism is not only real, but also a misnomer. Regarding the N-word, allowing a person... I was just getting in a little mini debate with my sister about whether... she doesn't believe that racism... Her final argument, I think I narrowed it down to, was racism towards white people cannot exist. Not that it... Well, it doesn't exist, but also that it cannot exist, because white people have never been oppressed. And so I'll just read out what I wrote down yesterday. Hopefully I made some sense. Regarding the N-word, allowing a person to say a certain word based only on the colour of their skin is racist. First of all, it should be clear that if a black person decided one day that they were going to go out and kill everyone who had black skin and would only allow anyone with white skin to live solely based on the colour of their skin, this person would be racist towards their own race. I think this may actually be contradicted by the official definition of racism, but if so, I would argue the lack of an alternative word to describe this hypothetical character highlights a minor failing in the term's meaning. So if you say the only deciding factor of whether a person should be allowed to say a certain word, not even necessarily the word in question, but any impairment of the right to freedom of speech, if the only deciding factor is the colour of their skin, regardless of how well you know the individual, surely this is in itself racist. If you had known and grown up with a person who has different colour skin to you, but that it could be said you knew better than anyone else in the world, and they could say the same for you, would it not be racist for you to then say that despite having a wealth of information about this person's character and beliefs, and you could confidently say that there is less than a 1% chance of them being racist, yet a complete stranger who you have literally no information about other than the colour of their skin, would it not be racist to say, I'm going to say that again. Would it not be racist to say, you will allow the complete stranger to speak in a certain way on the off chance that they aren't racist, whilst you will not allow the same level of respect despite having actual knowledge about the person's intentions? I'm not... so basically I'm saying, the suspicion of someone being a racist can be minimalised to an infinitesimally small degree, so a 1% chance. And if someone were proved to be racist but to have the same skin colour as you, would you still allow them to? Would you not impose? So you're brandishing someone as racist in light of evidence against it, and then refusing to treat someone as a racist given the evidence that they definitely are a racist. Anyway, well, I don't even know where I got to now. I'm not denying that the N-word has racist connotations, but if you are saying that only someone of a certain skin colour is capable of holding those beliefs if they have a certain skin colour, this might be the most racist statement I have ever heard. Imagine if this was reversed. In fact, I'm sure this will lead to the "but it has never happened the other way" argument, to which I say it does happen right now. Obviously nowhere near the same level. But if your idea were to play out, that white people should suffer racism for a certain period of time as payback, but are not allowed to refer to their treatment as racist, then on which day of our punishment as slaves will we be granted the right to use the word? And on that day, will we still be forbidden from saying all the treatment prior to that day wasn't racist because it hadn't yet reached the threshold? Racism cannot be a right to which only people of a certain race are entitled. At least it bloody shouldn't. Picture instead if you had an identical twin, except they had one genetic difference, the colour of their skin. Would you expect to be treated a different way throughout your identical lives? Would you seek to perpetuate it? I realise that when you think of how you... See, I don't like the way I feel as though... But this is because I was in a debate with my sister, and it's... Anyway, I realise that when you think to how you see it being used, you know it to be a term of endearment, but you are inadvertently, although perhaps more obviously than you might think, holding people of a certain race to a different standard. And to say that's just the way things are is to suggest that we should never strive to improve our society. How can we ever hope to reach true equality if in a hypothetical scenario where you enter a room containing two people, one black, one white, you will immediately hold one to a different standard than the other? You'll put a limitation on the freedom of speech of one over the other. I am not denying that people have different coloured skin, but people have different coloured hair too. If there were now 3 people in that room, 2 white, 1 black, one of the white-skinned has black hair, one has blonde, and the black-skinned individual has black hair too. Will you assign greater weight in your judgment of the people based on the similarity of their skin colour over their hair colour? We have to strive for equality, and if you believe that equality includes attributing certain personality traits to a person's skin colour without scientific evidence, cases could be made for the certain medical phenomena correlation with race being somehow incorporated into someone's personality. Then we are not truly seeking equality at all. Another one I hear is that white people can't be the victims of racism because they've never been oppressed. That is nowhere near the definition of racism. I would argue that there is plenty of truth to the initial claim. My limited knowledge of history tells me that white people are rarely, if ever, the victims of oppression, unless by people of their own race. However, this does not mean that cannot ever be the victims of oppression or racism for that matter. Well, of oppression or racism for that matter. There we go. You gotta get the what's the word? Never mind. Emphasis, I guess. It would be true to say, at least with it's not the right word anyway. Inclination or something like that. It would be true to say, at least with the information I have, you can't remind people of their history of having been oppressed. Oh, sorry, this is back on what you could say instead of it not being racist or something. It would be true to say, at least with the information I have, you can't remind people of their history of having been oppressed. It is not true to say that it is impossible to be racist towards white people in the present or the future. It's very hard not to get caught up in an endless cycle of reason by analogy, especially on this topic. I believe the aim of this line of reasoning is actually very important. I feel as though it's a crude attempt to try to seek and outline the first principles of the matter at hand. Unfortunately, we're not very adept at this, and it ends up behaving like the least efficient iterative process ever. Perhaps these people are talking about institutionalized racism, not that I know what that means beyond common sense interpretation, which I believe is still a problem, but not nearly as much as it has been. It's not so long since the country often heralded as the centre of the free world had a black man as president, and arguably one of the best presidents of all time. Well, some people argue with that, but I think he was a pretty bloody good guy myself. I think that part of the reason the news is and always has been destined to fail is that the industry demands the rate of information to match the rate of output, which isn't possible. As technology has improved over decades, the ability to get so-called news out to the public has increased, but the amount of things happening in the world has remained fairly consistent. The norm for a very long time was to receive news daily or weekly via newspapers, well, daily also being by newspapers, which then became a couple of times a day thanks to TV, and now with the internet it's almost every minute. And not enough things happen in the world, and if they do, which I guess you could say things, if you start to report on absolute bullshit, but interesting things, people can't report on it at that rate. So you get fake news, and you also get and all the reputable companies have to rush to get their information, so they cut corners and whatnot, and you get not really fake news, but informed news and whatnot. Yes, so Veritasium made a video a long time ago, but it's popped up on my stress video thing, and it's kind of like a thought experiment where you can, if you were to shine a laser at one end of the moon and then move it across, so you're on Earth and you shine the laser at the moon, and you move it across from one end of the moon to the other, then that laser will be moving faster than the speed of light. And then he says, well, it's not actually, nothing actually moves faster than the speed of light. The point does. But yeah, so I actually think, and he says it doesn't disobey the laws of physics because no information is transmitted. Well, I have misunderstood him, so I proposed a way that it potentially, I think it does. It could be used to transmit information. But I think I've kind of half disproved myself, but I'm not smart enough to disprove myself fully. But maybe I can't disprove myself because I'm smarter than Einstein, which is, I think, highly likely. I've known it for a long time. I've always known that Einstein guy, he didn't know what he's talking about, but this guy who could, achieve nothing, I know some stuff. Right, so with the, just if this ever does get listened to anyone ever other than myself, go watch the Veritasium video and then see if you can disprove it. With the moon laser speed of light conundrum, would it not be true that you could in fact transmit information faster than the speed of light? If you have two people on opposite ends of the moon, but assume the moon is flat for sake of argument, if prior to the laser on the Earth being shone at the moon, one of the subjects, who I shall refer to as P1, is aware that they will be the starting point of the laser, movement, whilst the other, P2, will be where the laser shone from Earth will end up. P1 will also shine a laser towards P2, but only once the laser from Earth reaches P1. In fact, I'll come back to what the impact of P1 actually being a mirror angle to direct the beam from the Earth laser towards P2. I never do come back to that, but you can just think about it yourself. But if the Earth laser beam can travel from where P1 is standing on the moon to where P2 is, assume P2 has good reaction time, faster than to where P2 is, faster than the laser shone by P1 is able to get to P2, then P2 will be able to deduce whether or not P1 has shone its laser yet. This is interesting because it opens the possibility of using binary, provided the incredibly high likelihood that I, a common idiot, is wrong and I have not made any heinous errors. When the laser shone from Earth reaches P2, P2 knows that P1 has shone its laser. Whilst for almost all of the time prior to P2 receiving the Earth laser, P2 knows that P1 hasn't shone the P1 laser yet. I suppose you could argue, especially if you're Schrödinger, that you don't actually know the laser has been shone by P1, it both has and hasn't at the same time. But that's even a gross abuse of Schrödinger's thing. Perhaps this is nothing new. I suppose knowledge of time zones works in a similar way. If light on my side of the Earth, If it is light on my side of the Earth, then it cannot be on the opposite side. Although I still have the delusion that you may somehow be able to incorporate binary information into this logical deduction. If you had 8 P1s and 8 corresponding P2s, would you not be able to send a byte of information from P1 to P2, P1s to P2s, faster than faster than the speed of light? At least P2 would be able to predict what the byte of information will be when it eventually arrives from P1. Okay, I hope that made sense. In my head, that's potentially, I might have fucking solved the world there. Information transmission faster than the speed of light. Don't mind if I do, sir. Alright then, this has been a long one. Longest one for a long time. Long. Just like my series of just like my my record of not achieving anything. You thought I was going to say penis. Okay, right. Bye now.